It had been 6 months since my daughter Jane married Tom and moved in with his family. She rarely called anymore, maybe once or twice a month. One quiet afternoon, my phone suddenly rang. I saw Jane's name on the screen and rushed to answer. Her voice was weak and shaky. "Mom, help me," she said, almost whispering. Then I heard a crash on the other side. "Jane? Jane, are you okay?" I kept shouting, but she didn't respond. My heart sank. I knew something was terribly wrong. Just then, my husband Jim came down the stairs and saw my face. "What's going on?" Jim asked. "It was Jane. She said she's starving and then the call cut off," I said, trying not to cry. Without another word, Jim grabbed his car keys and wallet and headed to the car. I followed close behind, still holding the phone, trying to call Jane again. She didn't answer. We didn't even turn on the heat in the car. It was cold, but we were too focused on getting to her. Jane lived with her in-laws just a few minutes away. My heart pounded with every mile. I kept thinking, what if we're too late? When we reached the house, Jim rang the doorbell. Susan, Jane's mother-in-law, opened the door and looked shocked to see us. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. We didn't wait for an invitation. Jim pushed past her and I followed. "Jane, where are you?" I shouted. Anne, Jane's sister-in-law, came out and blocked our way. "You can't just walk in like this," she snapped. "Move," Jim said firmly. I saw Emma, Jane's little girl, standing nearby. "Emma, where's Mommy?" I asked. "In the back room," she said, pointing down the hall. We followed her as fast as we could. Emma stopped in front of a door with a cheap padlock. Jim didn't hesitate. He grabbed a tool from the hallway and broke it open. Inside, Jane was lying on the floor. She looked nothing like the girl we raised. Thin, pale, barely breathing. "Jane," I cried, running to her side. She couldn't talk. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "Call an ambulance," I told Jim, trying not to panic. As he called, Emma stood behind us, quiet and scared. I held Jane in my arms, feeling how cold and fragile she was. How had it come to this? The paramedics arrived quickly. Jim told them Jane had been locked in a room without food. They checked her pulse and carried her to the ambulance. I asked them to take her to the hospital where Tom, her husband, worked. Thankfully, they agreed. I rode with Jane in the ambulance, holding her hand. She opened her eyes for a second and whispered, "Emma, don't let them hurt Emma." My chest tightened. What had they done to my daughter and granddaughter? At the hospital, Tom was waiting. When he saw Jane, his face turned white. "What happened to her?" he asked. "You tell me," I yelled. "She was locked up and starving." Tom looked completely lost. "I didn't know," he said. "She always smiled and said she was fine." Nurses took Jane into a room, and Tom stood there in shock. Jim pulled him aside. "Your mother and sister nearly killed her," he said. "How could you not see this?" Tom didn't answer. He just looked down, ashamed. Over the next few days, Jane stayed in the hospital. She couldn't eat solid food, so they gave her IV fluids. Slowly, she began to recover. But the truth we learned was even worse. When Jane was strong enough to talk, she told us everything. It started with little things, Susan yelling at her, Anne making rude comments. Then they took away her phone and computer. They forced her to do all the housework and screamed if she made even one mistake. If I tried to defend myself, they would threaten Emma, she said softly. Sometimes they wouldn't let her eat either. Then they started locking Jane in the storage room. They gave her just one small meal a day. She was trapped. "I wanted to escape, but they'd hurt Emma if I tried," she said. Jane said she once made it to the front door, but Anne caught her and hit her hard. After that, she stopped trying. But she had one secret, a hidden old phone. She had kept it under a loose floorboard, along with a charger. It was how she had called me. She had also secretly recorded videos of the abuse, even if only at night. She had proof. When the police came to the hospital, we gave them the phone. The videos showed everything. Susan and Anne were arrested. Jane cried as they took them away, but not from sadness, from relief. Tom couldn't believe it. "I'm so sorry," he told Jane every day at the hospital. He brought her flowers, read to her, and promised to never let it happen again. Jane didn't say much at first. Jim and I assumed she'd want a divorce, but one night she surprised us. "I don't think I want to leave Tom," she said quietly. Jim and I looked at each other, confused. "He didn't know, and he's really trying," she said. "He cut ties with his mom and sister. He helped the police. He wants to change. I still love him." It was hard for Jim to accept. "He let this happen under his roof," he said. But Jane stood firm. He was always working nights. He didn't see it. I didn't tell him because I was scared they'd hurt Emma. We couldn't argue with her pain, so we made a deal. Jane and Tom could be a family again, but only under strict conditions. Tom agreed to everything. "I'll earn back your trust, whatever it takes," he said. After a few months, we moved to a small town in the countryside, something Jim and I had always talked about doing after retirement. Tom left his hospital job and bought a small clinic nearby. It used to belong to an old doctor who had retired. The building was still in good shape. Tom renovated it and reopened it under his name. Jane returned to nursing part-time and helped Tom at the clinic. Emma started going to kindergarten and made new friends. Slowly, life began to feel normal. On weekends, we had quiet family dinners. Jane cooked, Emma played in the yard, and Tom helped clean up. Jim still watched Tom carefully, but I could tell he was starting to relax around him. One evening, Tom brought over a bottle of sake. "I just wanted to thank you," he said to Jim, "for letting me stay part of this family." Jim stared at him for a long time, then poured 2 glasses. "Don't thank me. Prove it every day," he said. They drank quietly, and I saw a small smile on Jim's face. I took that as a good sign. Jane was laughing more these days. Her cheeks were no longer sunken, and she even joked about gaining weight. "Look at my arms," she laughed one day. "I'm finally healthy again." Jane still had hard nights. Sometimes she'd wake up from nightmares, shaking and scared. Tom would sit beside her, holding her hand until she calmed down. Emma would come running from her room and cuddle next to her. "It's okay, Mommy," she'd whisper. Jane started going to counseling, and so did Tom. "We need to heal together," she said. She didn't hide what had happened. If someone in town asked about her past, she'd tell the truth. "I was abused by my in-laws, but I survived." Her strength amazed me. She was no longer just my daughter. She was a fighter. Susan and Anne were both sentenced for their crimes. The town found out, but no one judged us. People supported Jane. Some even came forward with their own stories. Tom worked hard at the clinic. Patients liked him, and Jane became a favorite nurse. Emma was thriving. She once drew a picture at school of 4 people holding hands. She labeled them Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa. I hung it on the fridge. I looked at it every day and reminded myself how close we came to losing all of this. But we didn't. We survived. We became stronger. We still had our scars, but life was better now. One night, Jane looked at me while we were doing dishes and said, "Thank you for saving me." I shook my head. "You saved yourself, Jane. You called me. You kept fighting." She smiled. "I never thought I'd feel safe again." That moment made everything worth it. The fear, the anger, the heartbreak. She was home, healthy, and loved. Jim, who used to grumble about getting old, now played soccer with Emma in the yard. Tom was no longer just Jane's husband. He was trying to be part of our family, too. One night, after everyone went to bed, I sat by the window and looked at the stars. I thought about that day when Jane called me, her voice so weak. I thought about how close we came to losing her. But she was still here. Emma was laughing again. Jim was smiling again. And Jane, my strong, beautiful Jane, was finally happy. I closed my eyes and whispered a thank you to the sky. We had survived something terrible, but we came out of it together. Families can break in dark times, but they can also rebuild. And ours did. Stronger than ever.